Well, hello and welcome to In the Growth Space. I'm David, and I have a great episode for you today, and I'm really excited to bring it to you because not only is it an important topic, but it's one that actually I've experienced myself. So we're going to be talking about transitions, and specifically growth transitions around businesses. Businesses and business owners oftentimes don't think about or don't even know about what their transition is going to be for their business. And we're going to be talking to two professionals today in the exit planning industry, and we'll get into that just in just a moment, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them in just a moment. But if you're a business owner, this is an episode I think that's critical in your own growth journey. I think it's critical in your own growth journey for a number of different reasons, and we'll get into that in the conversation. But if you're not a business owner and you know one, would you do me a favor? Would you send this to them? This particular episode, I think, is paramount for the future, their future. Any business owner who has a business and it's been their life, their livelihood, maybe they're a founder. In order to be able to serve their customers, their community, their family well, they have to be able to transition well. And so that includes succession planning. It includes financial planning. It includes a whole bunch of things that we're going to talk about in this particular conversation. And if you think about it, with so many boomers and Gen X in the population who are at that what I'm going to call retirement or maybe season transition phase right now, this is a huge opportunity for growth for all of those. So if you're in that population, if you're a baby boomer like I am, or in the Gen X generation, pay attention to this. We have to be thinking about our transitions. And quite frankly, one of the things that came up in my sabbatical last year was the idea of and the vision for what does that look like for me personally and my thinking and planning for that. And you know, the reality is, as I looked into this whole industry of exit planning or succession planning, there's some interesting statistics that I need to share with you. And the first is that of all of the businesses that are on the market, 70 to 80% of them don't sell. And what's interesting about that is that not only don't they sell, but 75% of them who do sell, so the 30 or 20% of them that do sell, 75% of those owners regret selling. And here's the interesting part. They regret selling because they had no personal plan. They had no vision for what their next act was going to be like. And so I think this is a really important topic. I also share in this episode a little bit of my own personal journey. That one of the other statistics is that 50% of all transitions are unplanned. And I share a little bit about that in my own story, in my journey, the succession from my father to me in the business. So I'm talking with two gentlemen today, Sean Gibbon, and Sean is with JFS Wealth Advisors. He is a wealth advisor, and he emphasizes forward-thinking advice and guides his clients towards achieving their financial goals because he helps them to think about these topics, and he coaches entrepreneurial business owners to really fill their financial gaps and to make sure that they're growing their business's value and then optimizing their eventual transition. He works with a team of highly adept and experienced professionals at JFS, and he is also the president of the Pittsburgh Exit Planning Institute chapter. The other person that we're going to be talking with is Lou Colella. Lou is the president of JFS Wealth Advisors, and the president of the advisor services at JFS Wealth Advisors. And he started in his career as being a CPA in the accounting world. And so he comes from the financial background and most of his clients were multi-generational businesses and privately owned. And then he left the CPA world and he became the CFO of a company, a 100-year-old business. And he was the first non-family executive in that company. And he was leading succession and leadership team succession in that organization. And then he was also helping to get ready the third and fourth generations to take over in that particular business. He also is not only, as I said, just a president of the advisor services at JFS, but he's also living out this idea of transitioning. So that's why Sean is on the call as well. He's transitioning his role to the next generation. And at JFS Wealth Advisors, he and his team have 4 certified exit planning advisors in the organization. And that includes Lou. And what they do is they help their clients to really prepare to transition to their next acts. And I think this is such an important topic, and I am so grateful to be able to get into this conversation with both Lou and Sean today. So let's get into that conversation right now. Well, hey guys, welcome to In the Growth Space podcast, man. So great to have you both here today.
Great to be here, David.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, I think this is an important topic for all business owners because, I was at the inaugural Exit Planning Institute chapter kickoff, and there was a statistic that just really struck me hard that 75% of the business owners who sell or transition regret it after they've done so, because they really didn't have any personal plan and they really didn't have an exit plan. And so I think this exit planning topic is such an important topic. But I guess we got to start with, what is exit planning in the first place? And, let's start there. I don't know. I'll leave it up to you guys to fight over who gets the first go.
Sean always gets the first go.
All right, Sean, you're up, man.
So exit planning just in itself, there's some definitional things we need to get out of the way. So first of all, it's a process, not an event. It's a conscious effort to grow enterprise value with the efficient conversion of that ownership into personal financial freedom and peace of mind. Okay. It's a good business strategy, and it's the biggest driver of wealth creation and realization for business owners. So it's important not only for the future you, but current you, because doing the right things to prepare a business for exit are also the things that make it more valuable and more profitable in present time.
Yeah, adding on to that, David, if I could. Exit planning. In our mind, we translate that to be transition planning.
Yeah,
okay?
Good. Yeah.
Exit kind of indicates the end, but really, business owners that are trying to grow value in their business are trying to grow a sustainable business. But the founder or the second generation owner operator is eventually going to transition out of it.
Right.
To build a business that withstands the test of time means beyond one lifetime, maybe forever, so it's really transition planning. Transition planning from an owner's perspective that accomplishes the owner's next act plan, one leg of the stool, their personal financial freedom, 2 legs of the stool, and the transition of the business at a value that makes those things happen and also creates sustainability for their customer base and their employee base. So it's really transition planning. That's why we say it's good business strategy. It's business strategy.
Yeah. I like the way you reframe that and really for us to think about it differently, because I to your point, Lou, exit does sound like, hey, it's the end, but really transition is we're handing it off, we're transitioning. And I honestly, I think that that's probably one of the more important things as a leader of a business, not even just a business owner, but as a leader, we have to be thinking about transitioning, because as we grow as leaders and as we move on and move in our own leadership, we're transitioning all the time. And so I think that mindset is really important. Something you said, Sean, that struck me a moment ago, and that is, it's it's about a journey, and it's not really about an event. And so, why do you think it's important then for a business owner to have at least an idea of kind of what they might want to do, after they begin this transition, or as they begin that transition?
So what they would want to do after the transition, as in like a next act plan?
Yeah, next act. Yeah, I like that phrase. Yeah, next act plan. Yeah.
Yeah. So you brought up the statistic earlier, 75% profoundly regret, right?
Yeah.
The reason why most of those people profoundly regret selling their business isn't because they didn't make enough money, or it wasn't successful. It's because they didn't have act 2 or 3 planned, right? They were maybe running away from something, but not running towards something. So for us, one of the things we really focus on with our clients and our owners is, whether it be retirement, whether it be flipping a business, you got to have something lined up that you're going to do next.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's only so many rounds of pool, so many rounds of golf.
That's right.
So many times you can clean out the garage before you start driving your wife nuts, and she says, go out and get another job, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and
David, and your channel in the growth space,
yes,
really is directly related to your question. We as individuals should always be thinking about what's next. How are we going to grow?
100%.
So how do I grow from, in the old days when I was a staff accountant, how do I grow from that job into the managerial job, into the partner job, into the CFO of a company job?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, what's next? How do I want to continue to grow? And in order to grow, you have to backfill that which you're doing with people that are just starting. So this transition is really the enabler for growth.
Man, I'm so glad that you brought that up, Lou, because you're so right. And I think that, thinking about how we're going to continue to grow and how we're going to continue to move into the future, I think is really important for all of us as human beings, and it's so funny, Sean, as you were sharing, in my mind, I have an uncle who has retired 3 times, and he's still working. And I think he's, I don't even know how, 83, maybe something like that. But he told me one time, David, I can only play so much golf. I mean, honestly, there's only so much you can do. And then you kind of get tired of that too. So Lou, to your point, growing constantly growing is so important. So, as you think about this idea of succession and succession planning as a journey and not an event, what do you think prevents most business owners from actually engaging in this, this practice? And I don't know. Lou,
well, I'll dive into this first and see what I trigger in Sean's mind. There are several things. First of all, I think the way we frame it, if we say exit or retirement, it's the end.
Yeah.
Human beings don't like to think about the end. One of the challenges as wealth advisors that we have every day is to get people to plan their estate.
Yeah.
Right. The end. Right.
Yeah.
People hate planning the end of their life. Right.
Right.
So I think that's one of the challenges, is to reframe it from retirement or exit to transition. Maybe your uncle transitioned 3 times. Maybe he didn't retire 3 times.
Right. It's
right?
true. Yeah.
Right. But there are some other reasons too. Uncertainty
Mm-hmm.
and a lack of confidence in how to do that is prevalent in this owner space. The owner really is confident in understanding what their customer needs are, how to make their widget or deliver their service, really confident about that. They do that every day, 24/7, many times, right? But they've never transitioned a business. So they don't know how. So there's a lack of confidence and there's an uncertainty. There's this practical mental trap of, if I transition out of my business and I rely on the income stream that the business provides me, when I'm out of the business, how am I going to live?
Right.
That's where the wealth management, financial planning piece kind of fits in. We have to bridge the gap of income versus a pile of capital that's going to provide income in a passive way. So there's this income trap.
Yeah.
Certainly when you think of it as an exit or the end, most of us think we have a lot of years ahead of us. So it's not urgent.
Right.
There's no urgency to this kind of planning unless we educate around things that I think we'll talk about, the 5 Ds. 50% of transitions happen unexpectedly, ready or not, here it comes. So it's not urgent, at least in the owner's mind.
Yeah.
And there's a lack of information or education, I say. The bad word would be the owner is misinformed. They lack the education of how it happens, how this process unfolds. So those are kind of the reasons that pop to mind for me.
And I think, one other, maybe on the softer side of things is, people who own businesses, entrepreneurs, so much of their personal value and their identity comes through the work that they do and the business itself. You meet someone new, there are 2 questions that you ask right away. How are you? Or 3 questions, sorry. How are you? What's your name? And what do you do? Right?
Yeah. Right.
So when you take away one of those pillars of your personality, it's okay, what do I have left? What am I then? What's my personal value to the world? And that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to overcome.
Yeah. Well, and
we're back to personal growth.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You're 100% right, Lou, because I was thinking too, I've always, said one of the things I've grappled with is that identity in my work. And, I love my work. I love what I do. You guys love what you do, but I am not my work. And I think there's a human element to this whole thing that we begin to do that. We begin to identify, I am a wealth advisor, or I am an executive coach, and I think that we have to take our eyes off of that for a second, because, I think that's a big area of personal growth. You're right, Lou. It's interesting. There was a quote in the book, Walking to Destiny, about, this whole topic. And the quote was, "Who were you when you were somebody, when you used to be somebody?" And, and it was talking about somebody on the golf course, and they were, kind of to your point, Sean, the questions we ask people, but, it almost in a different way. But I think that's sad. And I think it's really sad to be looking at people in that way. And, there's a couple of things a couple of places I guess I want to maybe go with this conversation. And that is, talk a little bit about, Lou, you talked about the 5 Ds. Why do things happen, or what are the 5 Ds? And let's just start there for a second.
Yeah. So 50%, 1 out of 2 business transitions happen as a result of what we call the 5 Ds. So the 5 Ds are death, disability, divorce, distress in the business or in the economy that affects the business, or disagreement among partners or shareholders in a business. So those are the 5 Ds, and 1 out of 2 times a business ends or some significant change happens because of them. David, I know you have a personal story around this. And we can probably cite many personally that we've run into where it wasn't urgent, except it became urgent when one of these things happened.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting because when I heard that statistic that 50% of these transitions happen, unexpectedly, it shocked me. But then I was like, well, wait a minute, David, you were part of one of those. And it's so true because, and I shared it. So if you're listening and you were at our Inner Circle Summit recently, you heard me talk about this because, on one day, I was a vice president of our company. I was the number 2 person in our organization. I was a partner with my dad for nearly 20 years. And then the next day, my dad died suddenly. And I was the CEO and I had to be the face of the organization. And I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared emotionally. I wasn't prepared psychologically. And there were a lot of things that my dad was grooming me for, but he didn't have a formal plan and he didn't have a formal process. So from my perspective, from a leadership perspective, not even just a financial perspective, which I know we'll talk about, but from a leadership perspective, I think that this topic is so important to be preparing our people for these kinds of moments when, hey, we never know from one moment to the next, I might get hit by a bus tomorrow and all of a sudden, you're up, right. you were on deck, but you're now up. And so I think it's really important to think about these things, but then we also have to have a process to take people through. Right. So I guess maybe, talk a little bit about the process that you guys use to help business owners think about this transition and like, what's the framework that you guys use? Maybe I'll go to Sean for that, or Lou. Go ahead, either one.
Well, I'm just gonna start Sean off, and then I'll go quiet. But as you're talking, it occurs to me. I mean, we had the COVID pandemic as an example of one of the 5 Ds.
Yes.
The COVID pandemic put some businesses out of business,
right?
Because they weren't ready. Okay, so there's no time like the present to kind of reflect on what's happened recently to say our goal as exit planning advisors is to have every owner think about becoming ready for an event like that. One of the 5 Ds.
Yeah.
Okay. Because think about what happens if, that day that you refer to, when your dad passed, what happens in a business? The staff, the employees that work in that business, all of a sudden are shaken. What's going to happen? Am I going to have a job? Am I going to have income for my family? Should I start looking for another job or leave this current shaky environment? The customer base, the client base is wondering the same thing. So from a value perspective, the business is at high risk of pretty significant decline in value if that readiness isn't present. From a community perspective, if a business like that disappears and people leave the community because they have to leave the community to find a job, the community is impacted. They're hoping that somebody fills the void, but startups are tough.
Right.
So there's a lot at risk. So the first step in the process is to develop this kind of awareness. This awareness is real and should be a real catalyst to say, where do I start? How do I start? Go ahead, Sean. So talk more about the process.
Yeah. So really you said learning, but the first step in the process is the discovery gate, right? So what you got to do is you got to understand, kind of like working out, you got to get a baseline, right? So you can, what's my waist look like? How's my, muscle percentage, XYZ, right?
Yeah.
You got to get baseline on the company, baseline on the individual side. So you got to get a evaluation. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, but you need to have a good enough starting point so that you can measure your improvement. But also, you want to start assessing yourself from a readiness and attractiveness standpoint on the business. So how likely am I to get people to look at the business, but also once you get under the hood, is it actually ready to go, or is it just a nice museum piece, right?
Yeah, right.
But on the personal side, you got to make sure you're ready as well. So there's a lot of self-discovery on what's your next act, what things are you doing right now that you want to keep doing, or things that you aren't doing that you ought to be.
Yeah.
And then looking on the personal financial side to say, where are the gaps and where are the risks that could derail you and derail the deal. The number one reason why deals don't go through that could is because the owner gets cold feet, either because they're afraid they aren't going to have enough money, or they don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So it's really important to balance those three legs of the stool, which culminates in a prioritized action plan. Okay. So what happens is there are themes that start to emerge as to, what the priorities need to be in order to improve the intangible value of the company, not just necessarily the number side of things. There are profitability gaps, there are value gaps, but where you get the value gap in the company is in that intangible side. And the intangibles, we talk about 4 capitals, right? So there's human capital, the people you got, customer capital, how diversified and strong is your customer base, your social capital, so culture, your brand, your way of operating, and then your structural capital, which is kind of fixed assets and process, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's 80% of a company's value is related to those things. And really what those things are related to is help me here, Lou. Quality of earnings going forward. Reliability.
It's the reliability. It's the reliability that the business can operate and grow at the same rate after transition event, whether it's one of the 5 Ds or an intentional one, as before. So it's the reliability of the business's continuity at the same track that it's on. Okay.
Right.
But back to process, where Sean kind of started deep dive in the discovery gate, but we really think about it as 3 buckets. You discover where you are. It's kind of a SWOT analysis, if you will. You discover where you are, what your business is worth, and how you're situated personally, how ready you are. Most all of us, I would say all of us, have things to work on. That discovery gate highlights the most important priorities for us to get ready. Then we have the prepare cycle, where you're working on those most important things. Okay. And as a business owner, you can be in the prepare cycle for 20 years. When should you start transition planning or exit planning? The first day you own the business or start the business, right?
Yeah, sure.
You're working to prepare for readiness for reliable transition for 1 year or 20 years or anything in between. Okay. You're preparing. And then when an event happens, you get a phone call, an offer you can't refuse. One of the 5 Ds happens. You decide what the optimal way is to transition the business for your customers, for your employee base, for the community in which you operate, and for the market. Okay. So it's discover, prepare, decide. Discover is a non-negotiable first step. You got to find out where you are. The prepare gate is where the team comes together, the exit planning team, the owner, and really gets to work kind of quarter by quarter, year by year, so that when any opportunity presents itself, you're ready. This is all about driving to readiness. That's what this whole process is about.
Yeah, I think that's really important to understand, is that it's a process, but it's also in a lot of ways, it's a process that helps us to think ahead of time what some of the eventualities could be. I mean, I always go back to my insurance days when I think about, why do we buy insurance? Well, we buy insurance because we don't know what the future is. Life insurance, if I die and my family, has financial needs, I need to provide for those. If I'm going to transition the business at some point, which all of us are, if we're business owners, we're going to transition that business, whether, it's on purpose or not.
That's right.
And so, buying insurance or taking this process, I think is really paramount to just really part of running a business. I mean, it's part of the process of running a business. I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's in my mind. That's where I think about this process.
It occurs to me that there's a pretty strong metaphor or similarity in physical fitness.
Yeah.
Okay. David, I know you work out every day.
Right.
Why do you work out every day? You don't have to answer that. Some people might work out with intentionality that their goal is to run the Boston Marathon.
Sure.
So they have to assess where they are, and they know where they got to be, right? And there's a date out there that they need to be ready for that date.
Yeah.
Okay. So that might be the owner that says, I want to sell my business in 5 years. How do I make it most attractive and ready to sell in 5 years? And that's a really clear workout plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love that.
But other owners, and every other owner, in my opinion, like a doctor would say, ought to be working out because they may have to run around the yard with their grandkid, right? And they want to be able to do that and not go to the hospital afterward, right? Or they're doing something in life that requires them to lift or stretch or move a certain way. So that's readiness kind of generally, right? General readiness. It's not necessarily for a race, but it is so that they can live a more robust and rich life.
Yeah.
So that's where it's just simply good business strategy. Improving readiness every day is making yourself the athlete that's ready for whatever comes at you. And that's kind of the name of the game. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I love that analogy, and I love that metaphor, because I think that just like someone who is working out or has a fitness plan, the ultimate goal may change, to your point.
Right.
Lou, one day I might be training for a triathlon, but the older you get, you just want to stay, healthy, to stay out of the cardiologist's office. Right. And so, so those end goals change, but the preparation is there. And so, I think it's a great analogy. The thing that we touched on, but haven't talked about, is the psychological aspect of the owner preparing themselves for not being the owner, or, being less involved. How do you guys do that? What's the mechanism or the process that you guys use to really help that owner begin to really embrace that?
Well, that leads into a broader discussion. exit or transition planning is a team sport. Okay.
Yeah.
So we, at our firm, we're primarily a wealth management firm with a team that focuses on exit and transition planning. Our skill set is about the numbers, the 4 C's, the discover gate, understanding the wealth gap, helping somebody prepare financially. Okay. So I mentioned earlier 3 legs of the stool. There's the personal leg, there's the personal financial readiness leg, and then there's the business attractiveness and readiness leg, right? So we work on the business side and we work on the personal financial side.
Yeah.
But at the end of that discover gate, as Sean mentioned, there are priority themes that emerge. And that theme that you asked about right there is very prevalent. Running towards something, not away from your business, deciding what your next act is. How are you going to continue your personal growth journey when you're not the CEO of this company, right? We have to convene a team of experts that cover that, and we don't do that. David, I know that is part of what you do for a living,
right?
The executive coaching kind of thing. But there are people out there in our network that we bring to the table based on personality matches to begin having the conversation. Certainly, we function as amateur psychologists to start to talk during the discover gate with the owners in real significant ways. If you weren't working, what do you do? What do you do when you're not working now? Do you have, and what we're really trying to do is uncover whether there is or isn't a passion or set of passions that they can develop. If there's the absence of them, then that's a high priority on the list.
Right.
I think often about presidents of the United States.
Yeah.
Right? That's the ultimate power job, right?
Right.
The leader of the free world. We actually say that.
Yes, right.
And then
what do you do after that,
the first week of January, they're not.
Right.
What happens then?
Yeah, exactly.
So there are people that I'm sure are, past presidents have kind of tapped into to say, what are you going to do? Write a book, start a foundation. Jimmy Carter kind of comes to mind.
Yeah.
Leave politics out of it. But if you think of Jimmy Carter today, you think of a philanthropist that's trying to help the world. Or Bill Gates, who intentionally transitioned out of Microsoft, and he's now leading a foundation. It's that kind of thing that we have to kind of connect people with.
Yeah.
Those kind of coaches we have to connect to owners.
Well, and you brought up something that I talked about in an episode or two ago, and it's really this idea of finding your worth outside of your work and being able to have a hobby. If all we're doing is working, then what is, I don't see the joy in life in that. And that may be just me, but I think we all have to have some kind of a hobby outside of work and some kind of activities that drive us and that give us meaning and purpose outside of work. And so I think this whole topic of, and I love the fact that you guys taking it holistically. So the topic of the succession, transition, planning, and preparation is such an important topic. One of the statistics, it's no surprise that the baby boom generation is now, getting ready to do that, or actually not getting ready. They're doing it as we speak in the tune of, trillions of dollars of transitions. And so much of this is so timely. So I want to make sure that we get this word out. And I love the fact too that the Exit Planning Institute is helping to bring these team members together in a forum that helps clients to think about these things and begin to create these plans. So Sean, maybe talk a little bit about the Exit Planning Institute. Like why did you guys bring it to Pittsburgh, and why is it? I know it's in a number of different cities around the country. Why the Exit Planning Institute?
Well, the Exit Planning Institute is the issuing body for one of the four of the letters of the alphabet soup that's behind both mine and Lou's names for certified exit planning advisor. But Exit Planning Institute, and you've seen this in the book Walking to Destiny. One of the big things they talk about is that not everyone, or you can't be an expert in everything, right?
Sure.
So when you're trying to help the owner the best you can't be a jack of all trades, master of none. You need to be an elite team, and you need to bring in people that are going to help get the owner from point A to point B in the best way that you possibly can. That is the purpose of these chapters. It's a two-sided purpose. It's one, to help you find your teammates, find the competent individuals that are serious about working in this space, serious about helping owners, and then also upping the game. So when you get that many people together, when you get 50, 100 people together, all doing this every single day, there's a lot of sharing that happens. There's a lot of best practices, and slowly we start to raise the bar so that, instead of, 7 out of 10 businesses not selling and just closing the doors, we can eventually start to reverse that trend and get owners to think more intentionally and help them live happily ever after. There's a big community component to this too, because as you mentioned, if a business closes its doors, the employees don't have jobs, the community loses their income. It's not just the owner and his family that are affected.
It's an economic one, right? It's
economics. Yeah, sure. And Pittsburgh's been through that,
Sure. Yeah.
We got lucky. We had a renaissance. We have a little bit of a rebirth with tech, but what happened in the 70s and 80s was a lack of preparation. Lack of, the outside unseen force from, other countries' cheaper steel. But same thing could happen today. We can't repeat history.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's more urgent now, I would say, than it was then, because we have two generations: the baby boomers, and the next generation after baby boomers, the Gen X. Gen X generation, and the baby boomers are holding on till their last breath before they transition. So many of them are kind of late to the game. There are a lot of reasons for that, not all about them. Some of it was about economic events that started, with the great crash of 2008.
Right.
But that generation has started and will continue to accelerate toward transition.
Right.
The Gen Xers are more life balance kind of generation. So they're not all about the CEO of the business. I own the business. That's who I am. It's about life balance. And I use that term instead of work-life balance. Work is important. Life is important. It's about life balance for them. And they actually look at their businesses more like an investor looks at an investment. And they want to intentionally transition starting in their mid-50s.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not going to work until I'm 75. I want to transition the first time when I'm 55 or 58. And that generation is there now. So we're serving two generations.
Wow.
Our advisory community is serving two generations. If we fail, the businesses don't transition, the customers don't get served, the employees are not in a stable work environment, and communities could fall.
Yeah, right.
I mean, not to be gloom and doomish, but we have really important work to do.
Right.
And that goes back to the chapter, the Exit Planning Institute chapter in Pittsburgh. I think there's 29 or 30 across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And that larger community connects our businesses and owners today with that larger community. So advisors that participate in that group not only develop their own team members in their community, but if a business owner has an operation across the country halfway, we can tap into the larger community and say, hey, are there team members out there? Because they have chapters that are involved, and there's a whole lot of connection that can go on much easier today than ever before. So we are, the chapter's missions. We're going to launch another chapter north of Pittsburgh, kind of straddling the Pittsburgh, the Pennsylvania-Ohio line.
Nice.
In early 24, and hopefully launch chapters across our footprint, JFS's footprint in Pennsylvania. That's kind of my BHAG, if you will.
Sure.
A vision that I have, so that we can develop vibrant communities of advisors that follow a standard methodology, have some common understanding of how these teams come together, because each one of those advisors touch potentially hundreds of business owners, and that's how we can reach into the business owner community. So we're up in the game, we're developing the community and the team for this really big why.
Yeah. Gosh, Lou, I love that because, I think of, when I think of community and I think of a community of advisors and a team, it's really the idea of, I always bring this to my thought process, is the power of the mastermind. It's, Andrew Carnegie started it, and so well, he didn't start it, but he was a huge proponent of it.
He framed it. Yeah.
He framed it. Absolutely. And bringing together all of these advisors who are like-minded and have a sole purpose of helping those business owners to be able to think into and create this planning and the actual transition in a way that is methodical and has a process to it. And it's so important. And having these community chapters is I think so important, because to your point, Sean, it ups the game, because anytime we're in a mastermind environment, I'm going to challenge you, you're going to challenge me. My thinking is going to increase. And so I think that having just the community come together for the purpose of learning together, growing together, and really choosing to help business owners I think it's so powerful and important. And Lou, something you said that I didn't really think about, but we have the baby boomer generation, but then the Gen X generation, they're both in that time frame. And so if we don't transition these businesses well, it could have economic impact. Real economic impact. So I do think that it's really, really important for all business owners to be thinking about this. There was a question in my mind a moment ago that I guess I take for granted, like, who are the advisors? Who are the people who are involved? Obviously, when I think of, like a business transaction or a transition, I'm thinking lawyers, I'm thinking accountants, wealth advisors. But like, who else is involved in that? What, maybe talk a little bit about that for a second.
Good, John.
Yeah. So the ones you rattled off, the CPA, the attorney, the wealth advisor, those are the easy ones to think about.
Sure.
If you're going back to athletics, sports kind of analogy, at the center of it is if you're a football team, right? A quarterback is the most important player on the field. He can win or lose the game for you. That's the owner, right?
Yeah.
But the owner makes the decisions in real time, but you need coaches, right? You need someone overseeing the entire process. So that's kind of your certified exit planning advisor, or even just, someone, it doesn't even have to be a CPA, but just someone that's making sure all the pieces are moving in the same direction. Another one that maybe isn't thought of in the same light, but in addition to someone overseeing the whole thing, there needs to be a value growth advisor, someone dedicated just to the business and helping them achieve their goals and priorities. And that's just layer one. So that's kind of like the non-negotiable, as Lou said, of your team. On top of that,
Sean, before you go there, so the tax accountant, main job is to make sure that in a transition, the owner keeps as much as the owner can.
Right.
On the attorney side, there's two kind of attorneys primarily that are involved. There's the deal attorney, right? The documents on the transition, okay, or buy-sell agreements or note, right? Drafters and legal eagles, if you will. And then there's the trust and estate expert to make sure that the estate plan of the owner is integrated. So the two kinds of attorneys, there's the tax advisor. The wealth advisor is really all about the personal side, right? Can you accumulate the capital necessary to provide a passive income stream after the paycheck stops, right? That's really kind of where the wealth advisor is. Sean talked about the business value consultant. We love EOS implementers, but there are other value consultants out there. EOS Worldwide is a brand that does it the same way with high quality all the time. That's core team.
Yeah.
And that's what their roles are. But go ahead, Sean, to your ad hoc teams. There's a lot of others.
Yeah, we have this giant list that we have where you start going through, the insurance agents, personal, commercial, stock, family counselors,
the personal coach, the executive coach.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So depending on what the needs are of the business and what that profile looks like, you're not going to need these people all the time. Like you're not always going to need your real estate advisor to keep reviewing your lease every 6 months. Right? If it's a 10-year lease, it's okay.
Yeah.
But when it's time to bring them in, you want to make sure you have that person ready, up to speed, and knows what their role is on the field.
Well, and it's, as you're talking, I'm thinking, it's kind of like, it's using sports analogies. Of course, here in Pittsburgh, we're all about sports. I mean, you got a kicker, he's coming in, it's 3 seconds to go. You got to know that your job is to get that ball through those uprights, man. I don't care how far away it is. Let's kick the ball.
You have the core team and then you have the special teams.
Yeah.
And when the special team time comes, there's a lot riding on it. Right.
Yep.
So
better pick them right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I this whole topic has fascinated me, and I think it's really important. And I think it's an important component of growth, not only just value creation, but growth personally, professionally, all the way around for every business owner. And I guess the one thing that we haven't talked about yet, and I'll ask you guys too, what haven't we talked about that in your minds? But the one thing that I think about is preparing that next generation. So, we talked about the boomers, the Gen X, we've got the millennials, and then we've got the Gen Zs. And so, you get the 40-year-olds, the 30-year-olds, and the 20-year-olds. How are we preparing those other generations, the younger generations? And I guess maybe why is that even important if it is?
It's extremely important. They're one of the 4 C's. Okay. So what makes a business reliably growing and profitable and sustainable is the development of people coming up through the organization. Okay. You have to be constantly assembling and developing that team. You have to think of lack of a better term, you have to kind of use the backfill analogy.
Sure.
You have to identify if you have somebody who's the next leader who has the leader competencies,
Right.
who is the next financial guru of an organization, who can drive the top line of the next organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'll take our little team at JFS as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And even before we formed our business growth and transitions team, my role was president of advisory services. So I had to create a team structure across our footprint, and I had to identify who the team leaders were going to be, and that each team had diversity in its age base, so that when a senior advisor retired or got hit by the proverbial bus, there was an associate advisor or a younger advisor that was on every client with them, so that even if they disappeared, the client didn't feel it much.
Right.
They may cry for the guy that got hit or gal that got hit by the bus, but that family didn't miss a beat from an advice side. In our team, Sean and I, there are about 30 years that spread us.
Sure.
Okay. So a big part of my intentionality, and this is true.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind me sharing, Sean, but a big part of my intentionality is weekly, I try to impart the experience. It's not that I'm smarter.
Right.
I've just been around longer. I've seen more things. I have more stories. And I try to impart those stories to Sean so he doesn't have to experience them to grow.
Right. So important.
So that if something happened to me tomorrow, everybody that we're serving continues to be served. It's Sean's responsibility. We have 2 associate advisors on our team to develop them.
Yeah.
For Sean, you've been around for 8 years now.
8 years. Yeah.
Right.
Love it.
To grow that, they've been around 1 or 2. So to grow them as fast as possible. So we're in the growth space, David.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's so great.
And every owner in every business should be thinking about that intentionally every day. I had a mentor 25 years ago. We were sitting at a bar having a drink after work one day. I didn't work with the guy. He was a client of mine.
Yeah.
And he said these words. He said, Louis, the best owners think about their exit every day.
Wow.
And do something about it.
Yeah.
And this guy was a serial entrepreneur that was very successful. So after that, because of how he thought about it. So, lessons learned along the way.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you're living the message yourself. You're growing, guys like Sean in your business, and Sean is then in turn, growing the other leaders within your business, because without that, it's you'd be like the what is it, the cobbler's son has no shoes, but you got to live the message, right?
Right.
So yeah, I love that. Well, guys, I thank you so much for taking some time to be here today. What's something that we haven't talked about that maybe you think is important for the audience to know, to think about, and maybe even where do they go to get some more resources, about this topic of really transitioning?
I'll start, Sean, and you can kind of tag on. So if you're an advisor and listening, the first and interested or are playing in this space, serving business owners around transition. If you're serving business owners, I would encourage you to think about serving business owners around transition, because there's a huge market need.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe that's one thing that we haven't talked about, David, is the need. But there's a huge market need. We kind of touched on it with the 2 generations. But the first thing that you should do is find that Exit Planning Institute chapter and come and start to participate in the collaboration and the conversations. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
The market need, I'll just kind of tick some things down. 80 to 90% of an owner's wealth is generally trapped in their company.
Yeah.
So from a financial stake perspective, the owner needs to transition well.
Yeah.
Or the next act isn't going to be well funded.
Right. Yeah.
60% of owners don't understand the transition options. It's not always the sell.
Mm-hmm.
It can be transition to the next generation. It can be keep the business and have
Sure.
a next generation management team operate it. But 60% don't understand their options. 80% haven't engaged with a formal transition advisory team. So they don't even have the team together. Okay.
Yeah.
DEPA is going to help form that team. You talked about the profound regret a year after. What we're trying to do is change that statistic.
Sure.
40%, and I actually think this number is a bit higher than this research. It's a little bit out of date, but 40% of owners want to sell or transition within 5 years. So let's just say half want to do it in 5 years, but 80% don't have a team and 60% don't understand the options. So how do those two things connect?
Yeah, right.
30% have no plans to transition at all. And we just said 50% of all transitions happen by accident, 5
by
Ds.
default. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Right. So I think the answer to your question, short answer, is take some action now. On our website, there's a lot of resources in the business exit and transition space. The Exit Planning Institute has a website. You can tap into the chapters themselves. I guess that would be where I'll pause and see if Sean has
EPI has a lot on LinkedIn as well.
Oh yeah, good.
Plenty of resources out there. Walking to Destiny, if you haven't read that book, that's a good way to as you hold it up.
People that know me know that I'm a huge reader, so I'm working my way through this one right now. It's a good one. Well, guys, thank you so much. I just have to say, that I'm an executive coach, but this is important to me because I see these business owners and they're thinking about these things, and as one of their confidants, they're talking to me about the next generation. They're talking about preparing. They're talking about some of the things that we talked about today, but they don't necessarily always know where to go. And so you guys are great resources. The Exit Planning Institute is a phenomenal resource. And, I just want to encourage those of you who are listening, if you're a business owner, get in touch with these guys, get in touch with the Exit Planning Institute, come to the events. I'm a part of the events. I came to the kickoff here in Pittsburgh in October, and looking forward to the coming Thursday, actually, tomorrow, as we're recording this tomorrow. So please get involved, because this is an important topic, not only from your own personal perspective, but also a professional perspective and the community perspective as well. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you for shedding light on this important topic. And really, I think stretching our thinking about, it's almost like life insurance. Nobody really wants to think about our demise, but we got to do it anyway, because it's what's needed. And so I think that this is what's really needed. This is a growth space for many business owners. So appreciate you guys. Sean, Lou, thanks for being here.
Thank you, David.
David, thank you.